Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
My, oh my. Much to talk about this morning. We got some great guests. We got Glenn Greenwald on. He's going to bring us up to date with what is going on with Julian Assange. Major updates in that case this week, of course. We've got Brianna Joy Gray. She's going to be talking about the results in Georgia and what Democrats may or may not do now that they may have control of the Senate. Great panel in the House as well. And that is, in fact, where we want to start with the blockbuster results out of the state of Georgia.
That's right. It's all about Georgia this morning. Let's throw that up there on the screen. Associated Press hasn't called, so we're going to stick with that. But we can tell you that the New York Times, many other news organizations have called that race between Reverend Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. You can see the map there, and we're going to get into some of the data. The second race, which is closer but also trending in the direction of Jon Ossoff versus David Perdue. Of course, remember that Warnock-Loeffler race is for 2 years. In the remainder of that term, it's a special election. This one is for a full 6-year term, and you can see Jon Ossoff there at 0.37%. With a 0.37% lead. The outstanding number of votes seem poised to put him over the 0.5%, which would avoid a runoff. Even in the event of a runoff, it does seem that margin, a recount. Now, even in the event of a recount, it does seem that margin, currently larger than the margin that President-elect Biden had over Trump in Georgia, seems like it would still be that way.
Yeah, so, the vote that's still outstanding is largely Democratic areas. So they expect those leads to only grow. But this morning, officially, the Warnock race called, the Ossoff race not called.
That's right. So that's where we are. Things trending toward, pretty amazing result. You'll recall here yesterday, I thought both the Republicans were going to win. Now within a couple 10,000 votes here or there. And so the question is, Krystal, who's to blame? And I think we have a few answers there. This from Dave Wasserman tells very much of the story. Now 19 red Georgia rural counties. This was in later last night that looked fully reported. Turnout was only 82 to 90% of November levels in every single one of them. And what really told me the story, Krystal, was midday yesterday, Perdue and Loeffler had to put out a statement being like, please go vote. Yeah. They're like, it was very casual. It was like, hey, just as a reminder, please
amazing,
go vote.
But
everyth's going really well, but please go out and vote. And I was like, oh man, these guys are screwed if that's what it is. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of the conjecture we had here, Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood and Trump all casting doubts on the election and so much more. It's both that and maybe just a lot of people didn't want to come out and not vote if Trump was not on the ticket. And that's likely what cost them the election this time.
We really have to step back and realize what an astounding result this is.
Yeah, this is Georgia.
Yeah.
What?
It's not only is it Georgia, not only have they not had a Democratic senator in forever, it's also the case that typically after the Democratic Party wins the White House, then you get this backlash and Republicans do really, really well. If you look historically, in almost every example, Republicans improve their performance from the general election into the runoff because typically their voters are more reliable voters and they show up in greater numbers in these, non-general election settings than the Democratic voters do. Also, let's recall that both of the Republicans back in the fall let's talk about Perdue and Ossoff in particular because the Loeffler-Warnock one, there were more candidates, so it's a little more complicated. But Perdue got a lot more, about a percentage point, more voters than Ossoff. So Ossoff starts with a disadvantage that he has to overcome. And the other thing that's actually kind of incredible here is it looks like the polls got it exactly right.
Yes.
We showed you the polling average yesterday from Nate Silver. It was right around 2 points for both of these races. And it looks like that is right about where they're ultimately going to land, maybe a little bit less than that. But we'll see as the vote total continues to come in. And again, I just officially Warnock called, Ossoff not called, but looking very much like Democrats are going to pull off both of these seats. And you ask who to blame, it's pretty simple. Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's Trump.
He provides, by keeping himself at the center of the news, he is the greatest motivator for Democrats to come out and vote.
They voted like it was a general, and Republicans voted like it was a normal runoff.
Yeah, that tweet that you put up there, Dave Wasserman, of like, only 90% of general elections.
That's actually pretty good.
Massive turnout for a runoff. It's just that the Democratic turnout was so insane, buoyed in particular by black voters who voted in droves for these candidates. So not only did Donald Trump provide the enemy and the adversary to motivate Democrats to come out, but Democrats tried something a little new here, and they actually ran on something. They actually made improving your material well-being through $2,000 checks the center of this race. Let's throw up E. It's out of order from what we said originally, but this was Reverend Warnock's message. So this is the non-white voters in Georgia. You can see the improvement for Ossoff among black voters from November and among Hispanic voters from November. So there's a big shift among non-white voters in favor of the Democrats in both of these races. And then if we can throw E up, this is Reverend Warnock's tweet. This was the message of basically look, if you vote for me, you may well get a $2,000 check. Could not be more simple and more clear. And let's remember that Donald Trump is the person who also put that issue in play. Of course, Mitch McConnell is the one who really handed them the ability to say the Republicans are standing in the way here, and accurately so. McConnell bet that his legislative tricks in bundling the $2,000 Section 230 election fraud and being like, see, we voted on it, and look, Loeffler and Perdue were in support of it, that would be enough. And clearly people saw right through that and said, no. You are the one standing in the way of this happening, and we're not going to have it.
You know what happened here? It's like the same thing that happened to Pelosi in the general election.
Yes,
Pelosi,
I know, isn't that amazing?
She played games with the checks. Everyone said, oh, no, they're going to blame the Republicans. They're going to blame Trump. What happened? They lost every single contest race. Mitch, I hope you're happy. Real legislative genius. Greatest majority leader. He's called himself the greatest majority leader in some of the histories of the United States Senate. The man didn't pass $1,200 checks before November, costing the general election. Didn't pass $2,000 checks before the Senate, costing the Georgia election. Now he's probably going to still be minority leader. And I'm going to do a whole radar on why that shouldn't happen tomorrow. But there's a lot going on here. Obviously, Trump, top line, toxic, motivates all of the suburban people, couldn't motivate many of the Republican voters to come out. And you also saw, crazy, minority voters immediately revert back to the mean whenever you run on Loeffler and Perdue. And there's two things I want to point out here. Alec McGillis, who's a great reporter, he pointed this out. For all of the attention paid to Georgia, doesn't think it's fully sunk in how wild it is that candidates for the party that is becoming more working class in orientation are the former CEO of Dollar General and the wife of the billionaire head of the New York Stock Exchange. And
they're also both cartoonishly corrupt, by the
way. They're cartoonish, and I know everyone was so mad at me on the right for pointing out whenever you were gone and Ryan was in, and we did this whole story on David Perdue and insider trading and stuff. And I was like, sorry, this is legitimate. This is corrupt. That's what it is. You clearly are caught I'll add the allegeds here. Allegedly caught trading on inside information and your position. And beyond that, former CEO of Dollar General, a cartoonish figure in both Kelly Loeffler. And the second thing was this, is that you can see how clearly Trump has driven the suburban realignment and made it real. There are two counties that I want to point out. Gwinnett County, these are both suburban ones. Perdue in 2014 carried Gwinnett County by 10 points. Today, Ossoff won it by 20 points. Cobb County, Perdue won it by 13. Today, Ossoff wins it by 14 points. These are swings these are like the Hillary Trump swings that we saw in Pennsylvania and in the Midwest that happened last night. So congratulations, Mitch McConnell, and congratulations to Trump and to Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell. They are all the victors of last night.
Everything had to go right for the Democrats, and everything had to go wrong for the Republicans to pull off this result. Even with Georgia shifting and all of that stuff, don't think that Georgia is some blue state and there's going to be automatic Democratic victories from here on out. No, this was a shocking result. It was a truly shocking result. And there's one other thing that I want to say that does give me a little bit of hope here. As you evaluate these candidates, the only one of them who really was sort of unique and has some charisma and some talent is Reverend Warnock, who ends up performing the best out of everyone.
Not a surprise.
And the person who was Ossoff and Perdue were less than inspiring, just like total cookie cutters, both of them. But the one who was really remarkably unimpressive was Loeffler, and she ends up performing the worst. So that does give me a little bit of hope.
On the margins,
like,
it matters.
Something matters a little bit here. And the last thing I'll say is, look, Warnock was also the most progressive. Based on his past comments, they really hit him hard on, some of his past statements when he, as a reverend in his sermons, talking about, he talks about socialized medicine. He talks about all kinds of, universal principles and communitarian principles in his sermons. They really tried to paint him as some radical, et cetera, et cetera. That did not work whatsoever. And in fact, I really think they messed up by appearing to attack the black church. And I think that is a big part of the backlash here and why African-American turnout in the state was so high and so supportive in particular of Reverend Warnock here.
It's possible. I think that's certainly part of the story. I know that's what the media is going to be talking about. I think it's suburban whites who put Warnock. I mean, you can look at these numbers out of Gwinnett and Cobb and whatever the hell ends up being the full total out of Fulton. At the end of the day, suburban white people are the ones who put Ossoff and these people and Warnock and Ossoff into the Senate.
If you compare with the fall, the big shifts were among minority voters.
Right.
So if you're looking at like what's different between now and November, I think that's the story you have to tell.
Congrats, guys.
We're going to have a lot more for you on this one, and we'll tell you what's on our radar. So that's next.